Hello. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about YouTube and my thoughts about it, what's going on right now. If you are not interested and you just want to get to the romance stuff, then skip to about right here. My son's in the back. So initially when I got the email stating that my channel would no longer be monetized, I kind of felt like I was getting kicked out of an exclusive club. I felt like YouTube was being like, you can't sit with us. And it sucked. I felt like I wasn't good enough, like my channel had failed. And obviously that's not the case. I understand that there's an issue with channels getting money that shouldn't be getting money. I just think that the way they're going about controlling that is a little bit flawed. Anyway, I started YouTube as a hobby, nothing more. I just wanted to share my writing journey. Writing for me has always been my #1 priority, and it always will be, I'm pretty sure. When I first started YouTube, you didn't have to do anything to get monetized. You just started earning money immediately. And then like, I think a year in, I can't remember, but they changed it where you had to have 100,000 views in order to start getting money. I was like, fine, I'll just, keep posting videos and work my way up. I eventually hit that point and I started to be able to monetize my videos again. And then this happens. So it's kind of frustrating because I was hoping, I made it a goal this year to try to get my first YouTube check, like the $100, because I felt like that would make my time that I put into this worth it. What I realized this past week is that I was focusing on the wrong things. As I spent this last week watching a bunch of smaller YouTubers' channels, I realized that that's what I should have been doing all along. I've really enjoyed watching other people's book hauls and videos about NaNoWriMo, and I should have been doing that this entire time. So that's a good thing that's come out of it, is that I'm finding new channels that I love. I feel good that I'm being able to support them. I feel good that others are supporting me. Although it's a crappy situation, there are some good things that have come out of it. Okay, on to the fun stuff. I've been thinking about making a video about YA romances for a long time. I feel like part of the reason that I had such high expectations for relationships was because of young adult literature. As a high schooler, I was not very experienced when it came to relationships. I was not cute. I was not outgoing. It was bad. And I read a lot and it ended up working out in the end, but reading those books made me feel like someday I'm going to have an experience like this. When I did start dating, I realized those relationships are so unrealistic. Despite that, when I started focusing a lot on writing, the love interests that I would write about were always the same. They were always smart, they were always witty, they always had shaggy brown hair, they always loved their family, they always saw through all of the girl's imperfections to who she truly was, and that kind of boy just doesn't exist. Or if he does exist, he has some major flaws as well. If I were to look back to some of the things I wrote when I was like 20, 21, I probably would be so embarrassed because it's so unrealistic. And I'm not saying there's no place for that. I think that reading about those kind of relationships is fun and enjoyable and is an escape, but I just feel like there's a place missing in YA literature for realistic relationships. And I'm not talking just about boy-girl relationships. There needs to be more lesbian relationships, gay relationships. If realistic relationships were written about more, then people would feel more normal and less likely to feel disappointed in relationships. I just think if I were in high school and I read a book like Rainbow Rowell's Eleanor and Park, I would have felt a lot better about myself and about relationships. That book obviously did not exist when I was in high school. I am writing one right now. The one I'm writing right now is actually based on something that happened to me. I have the worst dating stories ever, but the good thing about that is I get to write about them. And this one is probably the worst. So if you're interested at all in hearing about it, I will make a video about it. But writing about realistic relationships has made me come up with a list of key things that I think people need to remember when writing about relationships that might help them stay authentic. So here they are. Number 1, embrace the awkward. Teens are awkward. And when I was in high school, I didn't realize that all teens were awkward. When I became a high school teacher, I realized all teens are awkward. They're awkward in different ways, but all teens are awkward. Kisses are awkward. Your first kiss is gonna be awkward. There's nothing magical about relationships when you're just starting out. It might feel magical a little bit to some people, but to me it mostly felt like I was gonna puke or poop my pants or something along those lines. That is how I felt about romance in the beginning. I was not Bella. I was not immediately smitten with the guy I was dating. I would not have survived Edward Cullen. I would have thrown up in his face if he tried to talk to me like he talked to Bella. And that's okay, because I feel like that's how a lot of people are. I feel like you see a lot of teenagers posting online about who they're in a relationship with and just saying some really serious things, but then when you see them together, they're totally awkward. And I think that YA literature needs to embrace that a little bit more. Number 2, it is okay to write physically imperfect people. I am so tired of reading about only attractive characters. I've made this mistake in the past. But I am so tired of girls not realizing they're pretty and being like these gorgeous creatures and all the guys loving them and then being like, why do they love me? I'm so ugly. It's annoying. It's annoying when your friends do it. It's annoying when you read it. The she's all that moments don't happen in real life where you take off your glasses and let down your hair and all of a sudden you're gorgeous. Like, that doesn't happen. And I, for one, would love to read about characters who aren't physically gorgeous. I think this is another thing that Rainbow Rowell does really well, is she writes about real people. I think more people need to do that. Number 3, teenagers say dumb things. I'm a stickler for dialogue, and I love dialogue that's very realistic, that I feel like could happen in real life. Even in fantasy, I like dialogue that I could imagine being said. Sometimes when teenagers talk in YA literature, I'm like, no teenager talks like that. So I think that it's really important to capture the voice of whatever age you're going for. You don't necessarily have to use all of the same like popular words. Just think about how you spoke when you were that age. Think about, like, did you use super flowery language? Did you speak in super long complex sentences? Maybe sometimes, probably not all the time. Especially when you're talking to someone you really like. Like, you're bound to say some dumb things. Everyone does it. It doesn't always happen in books, but I think it should. Number 4, high school relationships are often short and not very sweet. There are always cases of high school sweethearts staying married for like 80 years and then dying beside each other, but that is definitely not normal. I don't even really speak to anyone from high school, maybe one person. I think that people put a lot of emphasis on like high school love and relationships, and sometimes when you end a book, it's implied that they keep dating. It's not realistic. I didn't start dating until college, and I still felt that way about college. Like, this probably isn't gonna last forever, but I think it's important to do to, you know, meet different people and try out different people. But you're probably not gonna marry your high school sweetheart. You're probably not gonna marry the first person you date. And that's okay, that's the whole point of it. Number 5, boys are more often than not clueless as teenagers. I would say this even about like 24-year-old boys. Something that I had to learn really quickly was that when I was like sitting in my room crying over a guy, I thought maybe they would be sitting in their room upset about it too. But more often than not, they weren't. When you're worrying about boys, when you're crying about boys, they're probably playing video games or sleeping or just like not caring about it, at least outwardly. They deal with things very differently. And everyone is different. I can't speak about gay relationships because I've never been in one, but from my experience, girls assign a lot more meaning to things like texts or interactions than guys do, and it's not always reciprocated. It's not always true. I think there are a lot of intelligent, probably introverted women writing YA literature, and I think that they are writing the ideal guy or girl to them, and that's not necessarily a person that exists. And I think that a lot of girls love reading that because they too idealize romance and relationships, and that can cause a lot of trouble in the future. When they start dating, they might expect different things because of what they've read. Even on the internet today, people watch YouTube, like daily vloggers, and they think, I can't wait till I have that. Or they tell their boyfriend, Why don't you treat me like that? A lot of it is idealization. It's hard to come to that realization that this guy doesn't exist in real life. The guy that I end up with or the girl that I end up with is going to be flawed. Just like I'm flawed, just like you're flawed. Everyone is flawed. That's something that you're gonna have to deal with in relationships. And that's something that's completely okay because that's life. I always think about that scene in Parks and Recs where Anne and Leslie are driving back into Pawnee and Leslie is telling Anne about all the terrible ways she's been broken up with. That's kind of like the impact I want to have. I want to share how terrible it can be just so you know what you're getting into. And it does really make you feel better when you hear other people's horror stories. So that's pretty much what I have to say about young adult romances. If you have anything to add, please leave it below. I would love to read it. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.